Hello everybody, Mike from Viz Academy here, and welcome to our next lesson. So today we're going to be talking about a few features that will be coming out with Corona 8. Among them, there's going to be a slicer material. And we're going to use industry standard 3ds Max, which is the easiest and most friendliest program out of them all. Let's get started with a little bit of an introduction. So for those of you that know us, Viz Academy is an online school that teaches students, designers, and architects how to create photorealistic visualizations. If you want to learn a little bit more about us, please visit our website, Viz Academy Co. UK, and let's get on with our lesson. So as I said, we're going to be using 3ds Max and Corona Renderer today. I'm using daily build that's from the 6th of December. What are daily builds? Obviously, I'm going to try to answer that today. And well, guys, I see that we gathered quite a big crowd, so welcome everybody. I see that we've got people from Nepal. Well, that's one location I haven't yet read on our chat, so hello. And we've got Ethiopia. That's also amazing. So guys, today we're going to try to take a little bit things a little bit slower. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them on our chat, and I'm going to try to answer all of them. If that question is going to be a bit too time consuming, I'm going to have to refer you to our email, but at the same time, make sure to ask as many questions as you can. At the end of our webinar, we're going to go over a short animation creation. So we're going to learn how to use all of the knowledge that we gained today to pretty much create this very simple animation that you could have seen on our Instagram. We're going to go over sections, how to create product shots, or more how to prepare your product to be cut like this. And obviously we're going to cut through a few buildings. We're going to learn how to set up our orthographic cameras to create shots like this. I'm going to give you a few tips that I'm pretty sure a lot of you would really like to know, at least the last time you were working with 3ds Max. So guys, before we start, let me know what kind of programs you're using, so I'm going to be able to give you a little bit more info. Okay, first thing first, we're going to start with this very simple scene where you can see this section of an object. In today's webinar, I'm going to show you how easy it is to use 3ds Max to create this kind of hello from Vietnam. That's another new one for me. Can anybody tell me this beat? Okay, so I was waiting too long, if I recall correctly, but if I actually don't remember which one is now connected to our live stream, but it might be my friend's creation. So back in the days when you wanted to create a section of an object, this wasn't that easy task. So most of the time when you wanted to create any kind of cut throughs, you first had to select the object and go to your modifiers. So a very useful modifier that not a lot of people use these days is slice. So for example, you could go for remove positive or negative, press 1 on your keyboard, rotate the slice plane, and that's pretty much almost done. But in reality, what we're doing is we're pretty much messing up the mesh. So in some cases, you're going to see that the smoothing groups are going to get a little bit distorted because without the modifier, the reflections are totally different. Here, we can see that, well, not everything is working. On top of that, we can see inside of some of the objects, those thinner parts are not really showing. But again, on top of our slice modifier, we should be adding modifier like cap holes. So cap holes is, yes, it's going to do exactly what you would expect. It's going to try its best to cap all of the holes. But again, yeah, it turns out that this solution is not going to work well, because if we zoom in, this is what happens to your model. Because honestly, most of the CAD files that you're going to receive from your clients aren't going to be cookie cut for this kind of solutions. CAD files are rarely going to have perfect meshes. So luckily, with a new installment of Corona, we're getting something for me, and I hope that it's also for you, exciting, because that's Corona slice material. So slicer material is pretty straightforward, really, because we've got a create caps option, which is cap holes, but from the level of material. We've got use material option, so use cap material. So whatever element we cut through, we could use the material that we plug in. So in this case, it's just a simple physical material added in. Okay, so wait a second, guys. I see that the chat is Brazil and Arena. Okay, welcome. Hi from Serbia. Wow, guys, this is amazing to see how many people are joining in Turkey, Uzbekistan, India. That's just amazing. Will this webinar be uploaded? Yes, this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, but not right after we finish. It's going to be available 1 or 2 days, maybe tomorrow, but we need to go through all of the elements and maybe cut 1 or 2 parts out if something really goes, if something unexpected may happen. Okay. Slicer material, right? Meanwhile, guys, remember about the questions. I'm taking questions today, so I'm hoping to see a little bit of those. Russia, Georgia, Indonesia, Nepal, Peru. Really, that's amazing. What we have to do to get the internship from Viz Academy? That's one of those questions that I would refer you to our email, and we're going to go over any kind of solutions that we may offer. So our offer is also available on our website, so visit vizacademy.co.uk. Guys, no spamming, please. Qatar, Pakistan, can you give any tips about making animations render faster in Corona? I think that we could talk about it because there's a few that I may share with you, at least those that I know. So, slicer material again. Let's just see how it works. First, you can see that I've already have this object. So let's just delete it for a second, and let's talk a little bit about one thing I found to be really extremely good in 3ds Max: importing files from your clients from all around the world. You know that architects work with ArchiCAD, Revit, SketchUp, and you're also going to be working with some manufacturers that will be using Inventor and all of that engineering software. So 3ds Max is pretty well equipped. Have you seen me importing this file? It just took me 1 second to click on this file because 3ds Max has a lot of presets, and it handles well, a bunch of formats. So chances are that the program you're currently using is also going to be on the list. So let's quickly recreate the materials that we had on this object. Right now it's fully white, so let's make sure that we go over the materials. So fireplace material, and let's not click all the stuff. I'm just going to guide you through. So those are physical materials that are now industry standard, or let's say Corona standard. The whole industry is slowly but gradually moving towards more physical solutions just to unify the material creation for all of the systems or all of the rendering engine. And that's a good thing because you can have more predictable results in all of the software. So now we're going to select the first material, which is a typical physical material where I only change the color to a little bit darker. IOR to 2.0, so it's going to have a little bit richer reflection, and roughness. Roughness is now going to be the default setup for your physical material. Before and now in legacy material we were using glossiness, but roughness is pretty much the same, but it works the opposite way. So the rougher the surface, the more blurred out the reflection, and 0 values on roughness means that the surface is silky smooth and it's going to have more mirror-like reflections. So let's keep rendering and see the changes that happen once I add a little bit of those roughness values. So one tip that I can give you at the very beginning, if you're going to be working with objects that will be, let's say, carrying a little bit of glossiness, my tip is to use lower resolution HDRIs, because in that case it's going to save you a ton of time loading the scene, and basically it's going to just handle a little bit better. Brazilian and from Vancouver, Tunisia, India, Aruba. Hi there, is this being recorded on YouTube? Yes, it is, and it's going to be re-uploaded. Yes, if you want, if you have any questions, please ask. You don't have to ask if you can ask a question. Don't worry about it, and that's going to always be welcomed. In Viz Academy, when we during our course, we encourage all of our students to ask as many questions as well they need to ask to understand the topics. For me, it's more important to make sure that every student that we have is going to be able to learn with us and not just go through the videos, go through our course. But our course is not just videos. We meet 3 times a week at the evenings to go over each student's progress. Plus, you're getting access to our support, a small army of tutors that are prepared for any kind of questions because they are seasoned professionals. So going back to our physical material, as you can see, the second material that I'm using is also physical material, but I'm applying a preset, glass preset. Previously, when working with materials in 3ds Max, it was almost mandatory to have your own large libraries for the most basic materials, because it saves you a little bit of time and not to click all of those options over and over again. So this glass material is done from the preset, so it was added to the front glass of the object, pretty obviously. Next, we've got this concrete-like part inside. So this is a little bit trickier material. Because I'm not going for 100% physical accuracy, I'm going to just make sure to add thin, because thin allows me to add translucency. Translucency, quite intelligently, is now calculated, counted as non-physical property. So thin, no shell, means that an object is going to have no refraction, but at the same time, it is going to allow for the translucency that's typical for glass. So translucency in this case, it's going to be it's going to allow the light to travel through the medium, but it's not the same as subsurface scattering. So in conclusion, it gives us this nice warm light distribution inside of the object. So the last material is for the handle, and the handle is pretty much just, again, a preset, chrome, iron, or any other material from the presets list. So let's just see how to apply the preset for any kind of Corona physical material. So you click on the drop down menu and you look for the material that you're interested in. I want this to be Chrome, and that's it. That's really how you make your materials now. So yes, obviously, if you want to create a little bit more elaborate material, you're going to have to add some kind of textures and maybe apply a few tweaks to it, just like I did with the glossiness earlier. But luckily, in this case, most of the materials I try to work with are as easy as possible. So this is just the beginning. So if I used a roof script and added it, I want to, if I want to probably for first floor, so how can I do that? So if you want to use ProBoolean in that case, it's most likely going to be the problem with the mesh itself. So I would recommend you to add a shell to that object to at least have a little bit of thickness on it, and then try to ProBoolean. That's going to ensure that the mesh is going to be actually accepting Booleans, and I believe that's going to help you out. While your course is amazing, and I don't doubt it, looks amazing. However, the price and change something a little lower. Has it always been that way? So our course is pretty much going to be a complex experience. So it comes with numerous hours of video recordings. It comes with a lot of pre-written tutorials and tasks. You're getting 7 days a week access for 7 weeks to seasoned tutors, as I said, professionals, and plus we're meeting for those webinars. So the price is pretty much right. So once again, let's continue talking about our material. What you can explain today can also be implemented in V-Ray. Thanks. Luckily, yes, this can be translated to V-Ray. V-Ray and 3ds Max are both going to be really similar, and I don't know if you know this. I might have not. I might have mentioned this already, but both of those programs are now pretty much coming from the same developer team, and that's Chaos. So Corona team joined up with Chaos team, and now the Render Legion is part of Chaos group, which I believe was a good move on their side. Now, what I'm doing is I'm adding a simple box. There's no trick to that. Because this box is going to be blocking some of the view in my viewports, I'm going to first right click on it, go to Object Properties, and I'm going to click on Display as Box. So this way, I'm going to have a little bit more control over this object, and it's going to be easier for me to see what I'm doing in the viewport, really. But that's not going to be a problem in a second, because we're finally going to apply our slicer material. Slicer material is part of Corona 8, so that's going to come up with first quarter of the upcoming year. Obviously, that might be postponed because of you know what reason blocks everything these days, but I'm hoping that it's going to come out at the date they already gave us a little bit of info about. So as you can see, this is the easiest thing ever. Now, I don't need to use any modifiers. I only applied this material and voila, it works. And please notice that right now, this material is not only cutting through this object, but it also solves all the problems that we had earlier with the mesh. It's pretty much amazing because, few years ago, if I had to do this, this one task would probably take me a few hours to complete. Now it's just instant. And what if you want to use some kind of specific material? You want to highlight this, or you want to just use different color? Because right now, if we go for use cap material, it is going to either use the default color of the object or the material that you apply here. So again, we're going to apply this material, and now we can change this color or the properties of this section freely. So this is extremely easy to do. Now, this is not exactly what I wanted to do in this case, because I don't want to use the cap material, so I'm just not going to apply it. So the original material of the object is going to be used, which again, I believe is amazing, because again, it would take me hours to complete this kind of task with mesh that comes from the manufacturer in the past. Also, if you're a fan of a messed up mesh, you can still click on create caps and turn it off. So you're still going to be able to look inside of the object, but that option, I believe nobody's going to be using it. So where can we use this kind of solutions? So luckily, we can use this in a lot of situations. So I prepared a few scenes for today, and we're going to try to go over that. Oh, look, our Instagram. You may want to visit it at some point. So it's Viz Academy UK. And let's read through some questions. If I use roof script, I already answered that one. So what do we have? Post your tutorial on Udemy. I can okay, Udemy is not really going to be something that we're interested at this moment. So hello from Sri Lanka, that's amazing. Okay, I don't know this language, but I'm assuming that's hello. Quite a long one, but it's probably it. So in many cases, when using a slice as a modifier, you're still going to have a lot of options. So whenever you want to create some kind of section for your college, for your job, or maybe you're commissioned by some kind of manufacturer to create those diagrams for some kind of products, and maybe you need to add some extra graphics with some cutouts sections of an object to go over the detail. So luckily 3ds Max got you covered. So let's quickly render this scene out. Again, the materials are done exactly the same way I described earlier, but for example, the panels are, okay, a little bit more elaborate, and let me show you how hard it is to do it. So it's just simple texture that I desaturated and oversaturated again with a little bit of blue tones because I didn't like the original tint. So that's pretty much it. And for this case, I'm using Corona Legacy because it's a little bit older file. Also, I made this reflection color to be a little bit blue-ish for, well, artistic reasons. Okay, let's continue going over this scene. As you can see, it's extremely easy to do, or extremely simplified in all the cases. What I love about Corona is that it's very responsive. It's super fast, and it allows you to see almost all the changes in real time. So whether you're a designer, architect, is going to allow you to pretty much just focus mostly on the creative part instead of just going into the engineering part where you need to understand all the numbers, what they do. It's pretty much, I want a little bit more reflection. Okay, a reflection goes up. That's pretty much how it works. We go over the details during our course, and we've got a special week just for materials so everybody can understand the basics and more advanced material creation. So whenever we have this kind of object to render, you may want to go over this kind of files. So guys, tell me, what do you, now we know where are you from, but if you could tell me what do you do for a living? Are you students, or are you designers, maybe architects, or maybe you're just here to change your profession? Recently, one story that I'm really proud of is, somebody decided that medicine wasn't for him, and that person just came to Viz Academy to learn how to create 3D visualizations, and luckily that person never looked back, and right now he's working as a full-time 3D designer. They are because now that guy is working with his brother, and that's pretty much amazing story for me because I count it as a huge success, and stories like that really warm my heart. So recently, one of the students during our course, I still cannot believe it because it's amazing to see. During our course, showed the first render he created with us to a company he was trying to land a job at, and well, they hired him. So I'm really glad to say that. Also, shout out, you know who you are, just putting that out there. Mike, I'm so grateful with you, the tutors and all the course. I am an architect, and thanks to the boost on my work quality, I created my company, and now I have a team creating beautiful projects. Daniel, that's amazing. That's really amazing to hear. So Daniel is our former student. By the way, guys, there's a lot of students, our former students in the audience, so you're going to see them as well. Is it possible to see the table of content for the course you offer? Yes, please visit our website, and there's pretty much everything laid out there. So that's Viz Academy CO UK. Architect from Iran, a student doing freelancing. That's amazing. So freelancing is a very good thing to do when you're studying, especially with 3ds Max. Okay, let's go back to saving our files. So once the file like this is rendered, you're going to be able to pretty much just take this to to Photoshop and add any kind of changes you want. What is going to be amazing about Corona, and what is not really part of most of the rendering engines I know, is that the alpha channel is also going to be semi-transparent. So you're not cutting out the glass with some kind of outline of a white color. You're actually getting a translucent glass in cases where the background is going to be just fully white. So let's see the example of that. First, I'm going to try to save this over my previous file because I believe it rendered for long enough. Whenever you will be saving, okay, you know what? Let's just delete this one. Okay, whenever you will be saving files, you want to make sure that you're using the proper format. The format that I use for most of my work is PNG. Sometimes I also save it to JPEG, but PNG has a few additional options that I want to go over. Whenever you will be saving your file, you will be prompted with this kind of window. So PNG configuration. This is just for the first file you create. In this case, I'm using 24 bits because Photoshop cannot even read files that are 32 bits or higher. So this is an overkill. We've got alpha channel, which means that the object or the file is going to have the let's say cutout, or the background is going to be invisible. So we're going to get a freebie in form of a cutout. Also, interlaced means that the file is going to be a little bit heavier, but also it's going to have softer edges. I don't need that for this file, so we're just going to save it as is. So save, and now we can take this to Photoshop. So in this case, it works really amazing. It's a drag and drop solution, and once you have something like this in your Photoshop, you can prepare all of the details, all of the descriptions, and it's pretty much just, yeah, this is not an automatic function to add those details. It's just something that I think you're going to be glad to see. Let's see what else do we have from our question. Practicing architect in Nepal. We follow you on our Instagram page too. So about Instagram, so what a coincidence. If you want to, you can follow us on Instagram. We post it daily, and we solely try to make sure that we post work only by our students, and we prioritize those works done by students that came to us with beginner or no knowledge of 3ds Max at all. I just think that posting professionals' work is going to be a little bit disingenuous because 70% of our students are actually starting from absolute zero knowledge of 3ds Max. So I don't want to discourage somebody or let's say misinform them and post some kind of my work, because I'm a seasoned professional with almost 15 years of experience by now. And posting my work is going to be a bad idea here, because I only want to show you what our students are capable of after following our course. If we post something created by one of our tutors, we make sure that everybody can see that this was only created as, let's say, some kind of introduction, or just highlight of a feature that you may be interested in. So all of those are works created by our students, and I honestly am extremely proud. By the way, guys, something that's really amazing is on our YouTube channel, you can find a lot of works created by our fans. So shout out to you, all of you guys. Love your work. So those are examples of, well, a few attempts created by our audience, and really this was amazing. For a whole 2 weeks we were just exchanging, wow, look at this, did you see that? That was amazing. So let's continue talking about our work. We know how the section is created, but how are we actually going to well, work with it? In most of the cases, you may think that working with sections is going to require you to just, well, create the material, apply it, and that's it. So typically, you may expect that it's going to be only limited to very, well, let's say, easy type of mesh. So for example, box. Luckily, that's not the case, because we can actually create almost any kind of object we want, and pretty much any shape included. How about we create a cutout of a teapot inside of this building? So let's just create a teapot, big enough, yes, and now we're going to just move it inside of this object just a little bit. So if you want to create some post-apocalyptic stuff, here it is. And now let's make sure to start the interactive render, and really, that's how easy it is to create this type of materials. One thing I want to give you a fair warning about is that whenever you see a mesh that's not connected, so for example, we can see that this teapot's cup is actually something that's disconnected from the rest of the mesh. So this is a separate element, and it's an open mesh. We can select it by border. Both the edge of the main body and the cap. If we now bridge them together, you can see that this line is making this cut through pretty much everything, and it's infinitely going towards the camera and away from it. So to avoid this problem, we're going to have to make sure that we bridge the edges like that, and that's going to fix this small issue that we had. So this is going to be a tip, and this is not a limitation. I believe that this is a good to work with feature, and well, it's amazing as it goes. So again, it is amazing. So is that my talk about our question? Okay, thank you. Okay, so Anant, I already answered your question. Please go back a little bit to well, beginning of our webinar, and that was already answered. Thank you, Yosef. Amazing, amazing help. By the way, that's also one of our students, so welcome. Okay, now let's make sure to continue throughout our webinar. So we're not going to be adding this object to any Photoshop yet, but I'm going to show you something that you also might be interested in, because as you can see, the cutouts through the building, because not only products, but also buildings created by well, you or your client in Revit, SketchUp, whatever that's going to be, cutouts are going to work really well, and you'll be able to add them to any kind of boards that you may be interested in. And this is pretty much what we're going to also create today. Obviously, we're not going to come up with text, but I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to create or how to prepare shots like this. It's going to be a good supplement for any kind of presentation. But first, we're also going to cover something that's going to be interesting. So this kind of cutout, which I believe is also going to be amazing for any kind of board that you may want to create. So let's jump to the third building, and let's talk about something called material override. So typically when working with 3ds Max and when working with your cameras, you're going to want to have a little bit of artistic freedom. So 3ds Max offers that, especially combined with Corona renderer. So we're going to go for material editor, and let's just go to our scene tab. Here we're going to clear this up a little bit so we don't have to add this kind of material yet, but really we're going to do it right away. So going to the scene, make sure to click on material override. Now we're going to create the very first material, physical material for this whole setup. It's going to be a very simplistic material because we don't want to waste any time on some details. Obviously, we go over our materials during the course, so you may want to also visit our website because, well, our course is definitely worth going through the materials because we've got a whole week of and a bunch of videos, like approximately 20 or 30 videos on just materials. So let's continue talking about our physical material. Again, let's start rendering to see what we're doing, because why not? I want to add those nice outlines to all of my parts to make them pop a little bit more, to make sure that I can focus on all of the sections or all of the elements of my building a little bit more. I did the course and made super nice renders. Jan, thank you, Jan Peter. That's amazing to see you here. Do you have video tutorials for 3ds Max beginners? Yes, if you go over our YouTube channel, most of our videos are pretty much a beginner or intermediate level. So you can follow them along at house, but we teach beginners during our course, making sure that everybody can learn with us. So once again, for me, it is most important that my students actually go through our course and learn something and not just sit there. So be prepared that the course is a little bit demanding, but it's worth it. And hello from Venezuela. Oh, and that's amazing. Again, I love seeing how many places we can reach. By the way, I noticed that some of you guys are already working with 3ds Max or any other software. And tell me a little bit about your experience. Are you happy with your renders, and how does it really work for you? You may have noticed that right now to Material Editor, Corona Wire was added. Yes, that's a map that we can see by the fact that the top of a map is always going to be green. It means that this is a component that we use for as a part of material, and materials are typically going to have a blue top. If the red part is also highlighted, it means that the option show shaded material in viewport is on. So pretty much it means that 3ds Max tries to project this material in the viewport as best as it can. So double clicking on Corona Wire is going to allow us to see its options. Again, Corona Wire is extremely easy, and adding this kind of shot to any kind of presentation that you will be doing for your clients is going to be a huge boost. We're going to go back to the scene a little bit later to create animation on it, so I'm not going to be closing it. By the way, guys, at the end of our webinar, I'm going to show you how to create that animation that you have seen on our Instagram. So first thing I'm going to do about with this Corona wire is change the world units. From pixels to world units. Pixels are typically going to be not a good solution for most of the time, because if you change the resolution of your image, the pixel size is going to remain the same, and you're going to get different results each time with each size of your render. So that's not really the best solution for me. What I like to use is world units. Typically, I try to shy away from too big values, but in this case, 5 centimeters or 50 millimeters is going to be the right size. We've got a lot of options here. So for example, we can add vertices, which are going to be pretty much the same as edges, but obviously vertices and vertices are just the dots that make up our models. Now we can change the edge material, but in this case, I believe that black color is exactly what I needed. And we can improve the value of the base material, which is allowing us to get this nice white values. Okay, again, we can save this into our Photoshop or from our 3ds Max to add to Photoshop. And just another tip for you architects, if you want to create something that's going to be a little bit more interesting for your presentation, you can always go to Pen Tool, go to Shape, make sure that the fill is set to none. We've got some kind of stroke. In this case, I'm using 2 pixels because this is going to be enough for this size, this sized picture, and we can either select the preset of dotted line, dashed line, or we can go for a full line. And in this case, I'm just going to go for this dashed line because it's going to be perfect. So if you want to create this kind of effect that we also shown on our Instagram, all you need to do is just simply click in one position and just go ahead and make sure that you create a little bit longer line that you need it. Now, if we look at this line, we're going to see that we've created a beautiful dashed line. And again, I believe that this is going to be extremely helpful for all of you guys that are architects. Finally, we're getting closer to the element of our webinar, which is going to combine a lot of this knowledge. And we're going to jump into the that's going to be our scene number 4. And we're going to go over the elevation shots, and we're going to see a little bit more how to create multiple shots from one scene without the need of going back to your computer each 15 minutes or 1 hour at a time, because you probably want to get some sleep, especially if you're going to be leaving your render overnight. You cannot imagine how many times before I had to wake up after 2 hours of rendering, click next scene or next camera, go to sleep for 2 hours, wake up and do it the whole night. This was a total nightmare when I was starting. How can you make a real fire for a candle or a chimney? So there are many options on how to do it. The easiest one is to simply use Corona light material, which we luckily created a video on our YouTube channel. So go ahead and visit it right now. So you combine a fire texture with opacity texture and you add it to Corona light. That's the easiest and fastest way of doing it. But the best and most realistically looking option is going to be using VDB files. VDB files is pretty much volume fog or volume simulation of a fire, which allows you to pretty much open any kind of fiery object using that question is surprisingly coincidental because I actually have one file that is available online. So using Phoenix, that's a good idea, but it's well, quite expensive. So in this case, I would suggest looking for different solutions. VDB files are actually very easy to work with. I'm not going to jump into details on this because I talk about volumetric fog and this type of objects during our course. Our current group is going to literally learn this the next lesson, but this is the easiest and best looking option for Flyer. So VDB files are pretty much the best solution there is. Not only it allows you to cover objects in flames from all sides, but it's going to also look good from each side possible. Plus, this fire really creates some light. So again, it's amazing because you can actually use it as a part of your scene, and there's no need for you to fake any kind of lighting. So VDB files are the way to go about this if you're serious about animating fire or just going to do some very elaborate setup. Okay, now about speaking of setup, let's talk a little bit about what I've got here. So first, I've got a very simple Corona sun. There's Corona sky in the environment, and all of the values are set as default. Something that a lot of architects are going to be probably happy about is that 3ds Max allows you to use daylight system to the level where you're going to be able to pretty much just decide where you position your sun based on the GPS data, or well, pretty much set the location based on this very fancy map that we have here. So for example, we can go for any kind of city, bigger city all around the world, and our sun is going to reposition to where it actually should be. So we can set exactly the time, the month, and pretty much be very accurate for your clients whenever it comes to your lighting setup, because a lot of times you will be asked to do some simple light simulation just to see where the light is going, what areas the light is going to be reaching. You cannot expect too much light in London for obvious reasons, but still it's going to have at least some value for your clients to have that kind of option to go over this kind of well, setup. But how do we create orthographic cameras? Right now, if you want to create this kind of shot in 3ds Max, what you can do, oh yeah, that's one feature that I haven't really talked about in 3ds Max, a little bit of crashes. So yeah, that can happen from time to time. So guys, remember to always save your work. Now the 3ds Max crashed only because I've got 6 instances of 3ds Max open and they are rendering on and off, so that was a little bit of a hiccup, I would say. During our course, you get amazing everyday support by our seasoned tutors. So if you want to join our course, make sure to visit Viz Academy CO UK. There's a little bit more info on that. We've got especially tailored tasks for our students. Guys, allow me to find a few textures first because that crash took me back at least a few seconds. So we're going to make sure to go over that in a second. So meanwhile, we can read a few questions from the chat. So let's see what we've got. I'm working in the industry over 15 years, but you know, it's always good to get knowledge because things nowadays with the tech are changing very fast. You have to be updated. Excellent channel. Thank you. That is amazing to hear from a seasoned professional. I'm really well, I really appreciate you saying that. So let's just plug in the textures. By the way, finding textures, adding the external files, and how to work with asset tracker. All of that is explained on our YouTube channel. So this is pretty much the video on how to find the missing textures video. That's why I didn't explain this part. Importing and exporting from CAD. This video is going to be very important for architects. So make sure to watch this later. I believe it's going to help you out, and it's going to really help you understand the importing and some intricacies of exporting files from different software. We go over the most popular software, which is SketchUp, Revit, AutoCAD, and a little bit of ArchiCAD, but you cannot just pack them all of them in one video. Hi everyone from Angola, thanks for sharing your experience, Mike. No problem, I'm glad to do it. It's supposed to enable rendering with tiles in the new crown. It's Corona. Yes, you can. I believe it is possible to start rendering with buckets, but I never understood why people would like to do it, because buckets are never faster than progressive rendering. That's why all the renders are actually moving towards that solution. And so, is there a way to exclude vertical lines on curved walls when we are using override material? Yes, that's a very good question. So it's not going to be oh my 3ds Max is acting up today. It really does act up a lot. So we're going to retry remaking that video, or 3ds Max is going to keep being a little bit hard to deal with, and we're going to start adding we're going to try moving on to the next part of our course. We're going to try to make sure to add a little bit of that. So again, let's add a little bit to this option. So again, this is not the link I wanted to add here. So give me 1 second so I can find the textures once more. It's going to be just a minute. This is probably why we shouldn't be always doing the live streams, because 3ds Max crashing can be a little bit of an obstacle, and now I'm wasting a little bit of your time, guys. So my apologies, because of some textures missing, we're getting this small hiccup. By the way, this could be the reason why I'm getting those errors could be the fact that I'm using a daily version. So daily versions are pretty much the beta versions of the software. We teach a little bit more about this during our course and how this really works. So if you want, we can talk a little bit more about our course structure, because I see a few questions about it on our chat. So how it works, we meet 3 times a week to talk a little bit about our students' tasks, and those are specially tailored tasks that are individually assigned to all the students. During that period of 7 weeks, you're going to have access to our tutors, which are also seasoned professionals. That allows you to pretty much go over any kind of topic if you want to learn a little bit more outside of the scope of our course. As long as we know something about the topic, we're going to cover it. Also, right now for the last webinars, where we typically take requests, so we go over some of the topics that our students may be interested in. So about the setup of this scene, you can see that this is a very simple setup. Again, in the newest Corona, there's going to be a change to your typical Corona scatter. It's now going to be called a chaos scatter. There's not much difference between Corona scatter and chaos scatter, but I believe they changed the name because it's going to be unified for both of the programs. We've got a few videos on coming up about this solution for our students. So everything that you may want to learn about scatter is going to be posted. It's going to be shared with our students. But on our YouTube channel, you can find a 1D spline tutorial. So we're not going to go over each detail of this setup. But long story short, all of the trees are scattered all around the scene. So we can see that we've got our line, which covers this whole area. And also we've got the tree that we imported into the scene. It's, one of the assets that we also share with our students because during our course, we make sure that you don't need anything really to worry about. Most of the models are delivered to you, and we make sure that not only you will learn how to create them, but you don't waste time remaking something that was already made. So we try to make sure that our students are going to work as professionals. Orthographic view, how to create it. In 3ds Max, typically when you want to create orthographic view, what you had to do before is create a camera, select that camera. So we just select this by clicking on the left corner. We can select the camera we're interested in. In this case, it's Corona Camera 6. So I'm going to just make sure to select this camera right away. We go to the bottom, very bottom of this whole drop-down menu, which is projection and VR. In this case, we're just going to make sure that we change the projection type to orthographic. And this is pretty much the whole shtick. We can now control this camera and position it in such a way that we will be able to create the same type of shots as we did for our Instagram posts. But what about cameras that are all around here, and what are those boxes? Because I wanted to make sure that there's going to be some kind of a ground plane on in this scene, but I didn't want those boxes to really cover too much, and I didn't want them to have any impact on the lighting. I made sure to create some cutouts. So also you can see that the trees are all around the buildings, but we cannot see the line of trees before our camera. So we're going to make sure to go over the setup a little bit more. So I'm going to delete one of the cameras, and we're going to talk about the setup for one of them. Don't forget to save. Yes, thank you, Maximilian. That's exactly what I would say to my students in this kind of situation. But unfortunately, it was one of those moments where the crash was happening at the right moment, right after I opened the scene that was already saved. How do we make sure that we don't see this this line in front of the house, and we actually work with everything that we need? So we can go to below the projection and VR and go to environment and clipping. By the way, guys, if you can see that in this drop-down menu, there's a lot of options. Tell me in the comments if you would like to see a little bit more videos like this about all of the projection types and how to use them. If you're interested, leave a comment. If we see that you are interested, we're going to deliver something for you. The question is not related to the current topic. When I add XREF file, I can't see it. Is it the XREF ascendant but not in the scene? What could be the problem? The problem could be that the file is far away from 0 in one of the scenes, so it may be appearing there. Also, please check if the layer which the file is imported at is not just turned off. Sometimes that's going to be the case, and if you're working with default scenes, you may actually have this problem. We go over scene management a little bit deeper during the first week of our course. So in this case, it would be actually probably this solution. Wait, this is Corona 8? Yes, this is Corona 8. Corona 8 is coming out in approximately a month. But now let's go back to our projection cameras. So if you want to jump into a camera that's already created in your viewport, all you need to do is select it and press C on your keyboard. That's very convenient. Also, what I strongly recommend you to do whenever you will be working with this type of cameras is to make sure that you copy them as instances for a very good reason, and I'm going to explain it why in a second. So now we're going to jump to let's say 2 viewports. Viewport number 1, save frames, viewport number 2, and also we're going to add a camera 4. So let's make sure that we see what we're doing. So whenever you will be rendering this type of files, what is going to be very important after you import it into Photoshop is to keep the size of your image consistent, because whenever you will be adding objects like that to your Photoshop or any kind of board presentation, whatever that's going to be, you don't want to waste time just rescaling everything. You just want to make sure that 100% of that file is going to be exactly what you're interested in. So right now it's let's just select this one. It's 50%, so let's just make sure that it's going to be 40% in this case, and we're going to also change the size exactly the same way to 40% in this case. So both of those files are exactly aligning, so you don't have to guess what kind of size you're going to be working with. So keeping this consistent allows you to work a little bit faster and a little bit, well, the whole setup is way easier. So I strongly recommend you to follow this method. And again, by creating this camera as an instance, I'm going to make sure that both of those files are going, both of those views are going to be following. So whenever I change any kind of value in one of the ortho views, all of them are going to follow. And in the end, it's going to allow you to get exactly what you need. Again, this kind of setup is going to be easily explainable. Right now, I don't want to go over all of those materials that we have in this scene. We go over materials during our course, and our amazing tutors are going to be available to you 7 days a week. Try to beat that. And now we're going to finally go to the solution I was talking about, batch rendering. Whenever you want to create multiple shots from one scene with multiple cameras, you may actually need to, you may be forced to render a few cameras at a time from one scene, and you don't necessarily want to wake up in the middle of the night to click next camera. And we're just going to I'm just going to show you how easy it is to create this type of setup. To make sure that the output path is going to be already applied by default, you could, for example, go to your Common tab, go to Files, and save a pre-render of the file. So we're just going to save a pre-render, create now, or just start the rendering for a second. And once you start the render, the path that we have as an output path is going to be updated. Before we rendered like that, the output path would be empty, and that would, well, not be the biggest problem, but it would not save you time. And Viz Academy is all about efficiency. So make sure to, that would be great. Wow, that is great. That's amazing to see that you're interested in that, guys. So again, let's go ahead and make a little bit of this camera setup. Also, guys, tell me if you would be interested in me showing you a solution on how to handle rendering of multiple scenes. So not only you're able to render multiple views from one scene, but you're actually able to queue a lot of scenes or a lot of different projects to render on your own computer or your own setup of computers one by one. And even if something happens, so for example, there's a power outage, the files are still going to be accessible, and you will be able to resume render at almost any moment. So now we've got this batch render setup. Honestly, obviously, we're not going to be rendering all of that right now because that would take us at least 10 minutes of your time, and that's not a good thing to do online. But I'm going to change my files right now. So let's copy it. Okay. And let's create a microscopic version of the same files just to make sure that we can override everything and quickly see that everything is being rendered one by one. Okay. Notice that I typed in a microscopic resolution, and all of those files are being rendered one by one, just to show you how it works. Okay, enough of rendering. Let's just make sure to jump into another thing, that is Photoshop. So once all of those files are rendered, adding such files to any kind of board is going to be a piece of cake. So as I mentioned, those files are going to come with the right size right off the bat. So it's pretty much the easiest solution ever. And I believe that's going to be the right way of approaching this kind of problem. So you want to make sure that your work is easy, consistent, and predictable. That's what we teach during our course. And I strongly advise you to visit our website. So our YouTube channel is Viz Academy UK. Well, you're here, so you obviously know that. And our Instagram is basically the same, Viz Academy _UK. No new knowledge is always welcome. Natalia, welcome. Nice to see you again. Okay, and now let's jump to the scene I was hyping you about a little bit, and we're going to create that short animation that I promised you. So guys, this is going to be the last part of our today's webinar. Still, if you've got any questions, go ahead and ask them right away, and I'll be happy to answer. Make sure to check our available dates. We've got last seats open for the January course. That's pretty much, I guess now we've got 8 seats left, but I'm not sure because I haven't checked the details. If you want to see what courses are currently available, just click on available dates. If you create an account on our website, you're also going to be able to go to the freebies section to download a few models, maybe see a few tutorials that we haven't posted on YouTube yet, and obviously all of the students' portfolio is here to behold, which I really love because obviously whenever I see this, my students' work, it's just, warming my heart to see how well they performed, especially that most of them came to us without any knowledge of 3ds Max whatsoever. So seeing all of this is just amazing, and I've actually am glad to have such talented students. Maybe that's the fact. So again, let's continue. So remember to visit our website, and now we're going to create this short animation. Is there any aftercare available once the course is complete? Well, the full support is available throughout our course duration, but we make sure that our students aren't left hanging after the course is over. So if they email us, we always answer all the questions, and that's our policy. If our students email us, we never ignore any questions, regardless of what kind of question that is, as long as it's 3ds Max related. So to create that animation, we're going to cover a few simple elements. By the way, guys, did you know that all the materials and educational elements, all the videos, educational materials that you obtain from Viz Academy are going to give you lifetime access. There's no ridiculous approach where you've got only 2 weeks to complete the course and then we cut you off. that would be really a bad idea. I hate this kind of solutions, and we avoid it just like we would fire. So definitely, if you want to have a solid and trustworthy solution, please sign up to our course. That's Viz Academy CEO UK. Once again, let's create this kind of any kind of box. I want this animation to be straightforward, just box coming down from the above and just cutting through this object. So to make it, we're going to first click on this small clock. I want to make sure that this animation is going to be a little bit longer than just 3 seconds. You should calculate that 30 frames is typical standard for 1 second. So 30 frames means 1 second. And we're just going to make sure that we make a little bit longer animation, and I want to go for 4 seconds. That's not a huge change, but you can see that the timeline now rescaled, and we're going to be working on a little bit different paradigm. So again, we've got this box, and we turn on the auto key, shortcut N. Now let's go to, for example, frame number 40, and we need to make this object move from point A to point B. By still keeping this auto key enabled, you can see that we just made this happen. So we created our first animation in 3ds Max. Because of the unfortunate angle, which is the orthographic camera on our in our viewport, I'm going to change the reference coordinate system to local. This way, I'm going to make sure that I'm moving this object from left to right. And this movement is pretty much going to be the rest of our video, and that's pretty much going to be up until the frame 90. But how about we just make sure that we don't waste those frames? And since we created this keyframe here, I'm going to just move it to that point. That's going to obviously rescale this animation, and we just created what we were going for. We could now change the color of our box in order to get this nice orange cutout, but if I start rendering, you're going to notice that the box is also being overridden. What I think is going to be a good idea is if Corona team adds another option to preserve materials. Right now, Corona material override settings are well, including displacement, light material, glass material, and unsupported materials. I think that slicer material would be also a really good addition to those preserved materials. So let's make sure that we exclude this object from our override, and we can now cut into our building and see the animation without really physically moving that object. Still, I want to make sure that I've got some kind of material that it's plugged into my slicer material, and that's going to be Corona material, Corona physical, and let's make it nice and bright so everybody can see how awesome your animation is. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So some nice bright color as we go, maybe a little bit deeper orange, okay, just like our Viz Academy colors. And now let's see what we've got in here. So, okay, and let's add a little bit more of that. Perfect. This is the color I was going for, and let's see how the cutout plays out. Please notice that we are basically rendering this animation real time. So our cut really starts at frame number 20. So we're wasting almost 20 frames. In this case, I might be really, it might be really helpful to change the 0 position of our box into something different. So we're going to make sure that we do that as well. So, okay, let's put the box a little bit closer to our object. Okay, it's here. Now, nothing is being cut yet, but since the next frame, we can see that we're cutting through, so we're not wasting any frames on doing nothing. and we're cutting through this building like knife through a butter. But how do we save a video out of 3ds Max? Because that's something that a lot of you may be interested in for the future reference. So what we need to do is go to render setup, go to render output, and put out one of the formats that we might be interested in. More about formats and file types during our course, obviously, so I'm not going to go over each of those file types, but right now saving as AV is going to be the best idea, because it's pretty much going to allow you to go for MJPEG compression, go for the best quality, and voila, you just need to click render. Not really, because you still need to go for the whole range or active time segment. So it's going to render from 0 to 120, or you can specify the time range if you don't have enough time to render everything at once. Okay, so now we've created our short animation, and we can hit render and let it rip and just simply wait for it to complete. But to make sure that each frame is not going to be rendering for forever, you have to input some kind of pass limit. Why do we use pass limit during animations? Because for the consistency, because there's going to be some kind of noise level in our scene. So you may want to make sure that you are using the same level of pass limit for the consistency in noise. What is also a good idea is go to performance and click on animation in UHD cache. In most of the cases, you will be using a different solution, but that's it. So Joseph earlier, or I guess it was Saad that asked about Corona render animation optimization. So this is one of those features. You can go to UHD cache, go to animation, keep the precision as it is. If you need more, just add more. But instead of calculating the light source from scratch, we can try to load plus append. Then we're going to save it to file, and you specify where the file is going to be created. That way, the light cache is going to be just created on the go, and it's going to allow you to save a little bit of time. This solution is best for animations that do not have any kind of moving parts. So in this case, we're not going to be able to save that much time using this method, but it's going to be very helpful whenever you will be using a just camera floating through your interior with not a lot of objects moving. So guys, this is it for today's webinar. If you have any additional questions, please make sure to ask them now. I invite you to take part in our course. Only a few seats are available, so don't miss out the chance of signing up and actually doing something productive at the start of for yourself whenever you have a little bit of time available. And now we're going to make sure that you like and subscribe our YouTube channel. That's going to be also welcomed. Subscribe to our YouTube. Thank you very much for your attention, and we're going to see each other next time with our next open webinar, or maybe some uploads to our YouTube channel. Also, remember to remember to leave a few comments so we know do you like this video or not. So once again, thank you, and see you next time. Bye bye.